we'll go through a few of them together. You'll probably get the hang of it. We'll do the graphing part tomorrow, but of course the answer you get from the algebra and the answer you get from the graphs should be the same, right? But we'll use basically the graph as a check and do the algebra as the regular problem. But of course you could graph it first and know what the answers are right away. So let's get started. Now you saw that on the review there that these already added up easily right away, correct? Like they were like 2x or negative 2x and so on. So here they are not. So you have to kind of predict that, well, if this is right here, negative or 20x, what would cancel out with 20x really nicely? Remember, cancel out or eliminate means equals 0. So what do we need right here for this to equal 0? Right? We need this to be negative 20x. So that's kind of the first step. You notice I picked the equation that had the bigger number, right? That's a good thing to do. And then you figure out, well, what do I need for that to cancel out? And then you can go back and figure out, well, if I need a negative 20x, what can I multiply this by to get that? And then you come up with negative 2. So it's kind of difficult to look right at this and know, oh, multiply by negative 2. We need to really go ahead, figure out what we need, and then go back and figure out how to get what we need to have. So we chose negative 2 because it gives us negative 20x, which cancels out with positive 20x. But of course, we can't just multiply the first term. We have to multiply every term. So that will give us, what, plus 10y? And then also, don't forget the other side as well. It's the whole entire equation. So this one will give us negative 20. Okay. And then we can solve it. And from here on, it's just review Algebra 1 like you guys have been doing. So this is 0. It eliminates. We have 2y equals negative 12. Means our y equals, try that again. Yep. Now you can plug y back into either one, and you only have to do with one, right? Because this is the one point where these intersect. Let's see here. So let's do maybe the bottom one. 20 times what minus 8 times negative 6. Because the y equals negative 6 equals 8. And just do your arithmetic correctly and carefully. Avoid any small errors. Like that. There we go. Equals 8. Subtract 48 on both sides. And divide both sides by 20. Get your negative 2. So this is the coordinate that these two straight lines intersect at. So if we were to graph it, we know for sure negative 2, negative 6, this is where they intersect. I'm not sure about the slopes, y-intercepts, and all that, but if we graph these two straight lines, that's where they would end up meeting at one point. And you'll do that tomorrow where you'll actually find the slopes and everything and verify that. Okay, so that's the Algebra 1 review with linear equations, straight lines. You notice how none of the variables are squared, so you know it's Algebra 1. So then we get into Algebra 2, where we're looking at conic sections. We have variables squared. Same idea, one of the variables needs to be positive, negative of the same coefficient. So for instance, here we can see that, well, we have x squared plus y squared is 9. This conic section would be a circle, right? And what would this one be? It has a minus here. It's kind of a clue. Yeah, it's a hyperbola. So you'll notice I gave you the graph for number 2. So you see where they intersect on the graph on the paper there? And you see the two answers? See how that there's two answers on this one? All right, so we already know our y will come out to 0, and our x should come out to 3 and negative 3. But that's what it looks like when you graph it, and you're going to do that for the rest. Okay, so it's a nice good review for the final coming up that you get to practice graphing conic sections. So same thing here. This one has bigger numbers. This is a 1. This is a 1/9 or 1/9. So we'll keep the bigger one, bigger coefficient of x or y. And we need to figure out, well, what cancels out with x squared? Negative x squared, right? We need a negative x squared for this to equal 0. So once you figure that out, you can go back here and figure out, well, what can I multiply this by to get a negative x squared? So there's a 9 divided by 9, right? So how can you get rid of this division of 9? Multiply by 9. So that takes care of getting rid of the 9. And what else do we need? What is it? Remember, we need a negative x squared. So this needs to be a negative 9. So the negative and the 9 have two different functions. The 9 is just to cancel out divided by 9 here, so it equals 1. And then I need a negative here to get the negative 1x. And since I'm canceling out x, I don't care what this number does to the y's or anything else. It doesn't matter. It's just one variable I'm focused on. You don't need to cancel out both of them, just one. So we know that cancels out to negative x squared, and of course we have to do the same thing here. So we'll have negative 9 times the y squared. Okay. That'll give us 9 y squared over 4. And then we have the negative times the negative will give us positive. Then on the right-hand side, a little bit easier, negative 9 times 1 is negative 9. There we go. Okay. So we don't care what the other terms come out to, because the whole goal to start off here is what we have right here is eliminate one variable. We'll worry about the other stuff later. So here is where we needed that other practice review that we did earlier. You need to know how to add 1 plus 9 over 4 and not say, well, wait a minute, how do you do that and how come? And you should just look at this and with enough practice come up with, that's 13 over 4, y squared. And move on and not have to think twice about it. So with enough practice, that should just be the case. If you're not there yet, you just need to do the practice and it'll come back to you the more you do. Okay? And of course, the rest of it's just algebra, basic algebra, solving both sides. So if y squared equals 0, take the square root of both sides, so y equals 0, which you already knew by looking at the graph answer that's on your paper, right? You can see the y coordinate for both of those are 0. It's a negative 3 comma 0 and a positive 3 comma 0. And then the same idea is that we have to take our y, plug it back into either one, and get what x is. Now, it definitely looks like the top equation is easier to work with, so I would advise always plugging into the more simple looking equation. Right, so we know we have x squared plus our y, which is 0, 0 squared, is 9. Is 9, which of course means x squared is 9, which means x equals what? Is that correct? Yeah, don't forget the plus or minus. We are square rooting both sides, so this is how you get two answers on that graph. You get a y is just one single number, 0, but since we get x is positive 3 and x is negative 3, that's how we get the two answers of negative 3 comma 0 and positive 3 comma 0. We get both answers. It's not more work because all it is just a plus and minus sign at the end. But make sure you have both. Got to have both. Right? And the sketch again, you look at your paper, it looks something like this. Hyperbola intersecting at 2 points, which are right here. And the intersection is the answer. All right. So everything's familiar. You've seen everything here before. We're just combining things you've done before. The Algebra 1 system of equations with the conic sections you've already solved before and graphed before. All right. Let's take a look at just a few more. You guys can kind of probably figure out, well, how should we set this one up? What can we multiply by on the second one? So that one of the variables cancel out. So first of all, you got to look at your choices. You have x and y. Which one is easier to cancel out? Probably x, right? So that's the first decision. Between an x squared and this parentheses and distributive, and probably easier to stick with x squared to cancel out. So you got to make a gut decision or a common sense decision on which one is easier to work with. Technically, either one will work, but one will probably be easier. Second is, what will cancel out this variable? Which will cancel? What will cancel this out? Yeah. And then work backwards, of course. What should I multiply by to get that? Yeah, just -1. This needs to go from x squared to negative x squared. No problem, right? So multiply. Now notice this is one term right here. We are so used to having to distribute 2 times on the left and 1 time on the right, but that's because there's always 2 terms on the left. There's like a 5x minus a 3y. There's like a plus or minus between. That's why you have to distribute to 2. This is multiplication. This is all one term. This is one term like this is one term. So you just need to multiply by this 1 time. This is positive 8, y minus 5. Okay. Notice how we did not change this from y minus 5 to y plus 5. You're not distributing inside the parentheses. This is just one term. So like if this was positive, you would change this just to -5. So just keep it the same if there's no plus or minus between terms. There you go. So here we got 0 on the right, that equals 0. On the left, these are not like terms here because they have different contents in the parentheses. So we'll just have to write them both side by side, distribute, and solve the whole thing. And from here, you guys can distribute the 8y, do all the work to find out what y equals, plug it back into either to find out what the x is equal, and so on. I can kind of tell there's going to be 2 x answers because this is an x squared, meaning you guys know if it's a squared, that's how many roots there are. This is y to the first, so we only have y equals 1 number. Here we'll have a plus or minus. Okay. And I think we'll do just one more on the back, get started on that, and then stop there. But this should look very similar to which number so far? Very similar to number 2, right? So use these to help yourself. What do you suppose we should multiply by in that second equation in order to start this off? What should we multiply by here? Yeah, -49. So use your paper. That's why we do notes and we do a few together. You can find out patterns, and then when you come across them yourself, you don't have to start from scratch and figure it out. You can just adapt something you've already seen. So number 2 is x squared over 9. We multiply by -9. It makes sense if it's x squared over 49, multiply by -49. Just to remember that this is 49 because we need to cancel out dividing by 49 here. And this is negative because we need to end up with a negative x squared to cancel out this positive x squared. All right, and then do it all the way across. So we get negative 49 y squared equals negative 49, and you can solve the rest. Now, somebody else might look at this and say, wait a minute, this is a positive y squared, this is a negative y squared. Can I just multiply one of these by negative 1 and cancel out the y squareds? Absolutely. So there's more than one way of doing this correctly. It's personal choice, and try both if you want to see what happens. You'll probably find one has fewer fractions than the other. That's why I chose this way, because there's no fractions really involved. But if there are, it shouldn't make a difference on your accuracy. You just have to be, have more space to work maybe. Okay? So I'll leave you with that. You want to finish 1 through 4 and then also do the graphs. If you want to try 5, 6, and 7, go right ahead, but we'll do a little bit of that tomorrow, and that will be our week. Okay?